Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you, Kiran, for holding holding the space on my behalf. I had some last-minute technical challenges that I have to overcome. Lots of gratitude to all the organizers for putting this together, for creating this platform for these conversations to. Yeah, I was saying. Yeah, I was mentioning lots of gratitude to all the organizers who've made this possible for all of us to gather and engage in this dialogue. What really stands out for me is that we are calling this truth and reconciliation. And indeed, it is only through connecting with the highest truth that we will be able to reconcile our differences. And the journey is a long one of constantly revealing our highest truth and then examining it closely to see if it could go further, if it could go deeper in a way that includes everybody. And I'm looking forward to this experience. Slightly nervous because I've picked up a fairly contentious subject to discuss in this gathering. Let's begin. I was thinking of starting with a check-in. If you could share a little bit about yourself and what you're hoping to take away from this dialogue, it will really help me to contextualize whatever I have prepared in a way that allows me to address what everybody is hoping to take away from this engagement.
Okay, I will go first. Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
As I said before, my name is Orgad and I'm from Israel. Yesterday we had some kind of feast. It's called Tisha B'Av. It's the day of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem was set on fire 2,000 years ago, approximately. And it was the day of feast. And when I think about why things decimate, why things are burnt, it uncovers things of, I think, free hatred. I think there's a thing that's called free love, and we are suffering from free hatred, and this is, if not me, then who? And I am also a student of a thing that's called the Knowledge Book, which is universal work that combines all the sacred books. And so there's a lot of Islam in this book. So it's, I have a lot of curiosity about what is going to unfold in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Orgad.
Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to share, who would like to go next?
Hi, Mujib.
Hi.
How are you? Finally, this happens, right?
Yes, we have spoken so much about it.
So we've talked about this for what, 5 years now?
Yeah, we did.
And I think it's really lovely that it's, you know, I know you struggled and I've struggled in finding fellow travelers who can talk the language of reconciliation. And I think when I look at not just India but the world today and see how much we get uh, divided along just about every conceivable line, I think there is need for reconciliation, and there is need for a learning about the process of reconciliation. It seems to me. How do we do this? How do we talk? How do we? And for me, this is an opportunity to do that. That's why I'm here.
Thank you, Chitran. I wish I could give you a hug. You look
You did.
glorious. You look glorious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would like to go
Can I
next?
speak?
Yes.
Stella.
Please. Yes, Stella.
Okay.
Hi.
I'm from Nigeria. My name is Stella Francis. I'm an interfaith and intercultural dialogue expert. I am here to learn from everybody.
Oh, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Stella, for gracing this.
Hey Mujib.
Hey, Anand. I saw your
Hi.
name and I smiled to myself. Hi.
Yeah,
Good to-
same here. So,
Yeah.
so I love the fact that you are conducting the session, and I said this is a great way of reconnecting with you.
Yeah, I know.
That was something I was looking forward to, and also the topic, the way it was mentioned, journey into the heart
Yeah.
and the context. I was quite intrigued by that. We've had a couple of conversations on this
Yeah.
many years ago.
Yes.
So yeah, so looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anand.
Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Elif. I'm originally from Turkey. I live in the UK. And I am an energy healer, and I'm very much focused on healing the heart. And I work with ancestral trauma. And yeah, I'm very much curious to hear the discussion today, because I really want to live in a world where we are focused on the similarities rather than the separation. The separation is just the illusion. And I would really love to hear everybody's perspective, because I feel like this kind of gatherings are very enriching, because we all think that we are alone, feeling the same misery in our homes, but we are all feeling the same, thinking that we are alone. So I created a very complicated sentence, but I think I made my point. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you, Alif. Would like to speak next? Anybody willing to step forward and share?
Hi, Mujib.
Hi, Anuradha. So good to see you.
Yes, I'm here just to be around you and to listen to what you have to say. And yeah, really, actually, that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Alif.
yes, I look forward to this interaction, whichever way it goes.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi Mujib, this is Vijay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Vijay, how are you?
Good. So nice to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
I'm calling in from Mumbai, and my interest, Mujib, really is that I find myself particularly when it comes to Islam, I find myself kind of trapped by stereotypes. And much as I try to get past those stereotypes and really understand the essence of the faith and the practice and the people who practice that faith, I find myself getting stuck. And therefore, when I saw the topic and when I knew that you were presenting it, what I would like to take away from the session is some ways by which potentially I might be able to look past the stereotypes that I sometimes get stuck in.
Thank you for articulating this, Vijay. It touches my heart. Thank you for saying this. It moves me actually.
Welfare and accommodation.
Okay. All right. If nobody's stepping forward, then I will begin. I'd like to begin in the way I would open a dialogue of this kind if I was in an Islamic setting, not a global multicultural setting, but essentially Islamic setting. So I'll start with a small recitation. I'll greet you and then I will begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب زدني علما. رب زدني علما. رب زدني علما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings of Allah upon everyone in this gathering. What I have recited briefly is essentially sending salams upon beloved Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, starting with invoking Allah to hold us and shower this gathering with his mercies, and to open my chest, expand my chest, and to unknot my tongue so that whatever I speak touches your hearts. That's essentially the recitation, the essence of the recitation. I'm not translating literally. I'd like to start with a little bit of my story. Some of you are familiar with parts of the story, but I'm also sharing some of what occurred in my heart. In 2012, 11-12, I had the opportunity to walk from the southernmost tip of our country, India, Kanyakumari, all the way up to Delhi, traveling about 3,300 kilometers, being on the road. The intention of that long walk was to invite people across the country to gather under trees or wherever we could have some meeting spaces and speak with each other about the importance of personal honesty. The backdrop of this walk was there was this huge eruption of anger across the country about the large-scale corruption that people were beginning to pay attention to, and wanted to change this phenomena of corruption in public offices and public spaces. Government representatives walking away with monies that were intended for the poorest of the poor in the country and not being held to account. So there was this huge anger. And in this anger, there was some sort of a collective consciousness which was converging around the idea of coming up with an institution, sort of a super institution that will supersede all the three institutions of our democracy, which is the bureaucracy, the parliament, and the judiciary. It was felt that there needs to be some sort of a super institution that will oversee especially corruption in these three institutions. And that to me was fairly alarming, because it was likely to undermine the very democratic fabric and governance structure that was enshrined in our constitution. But the anger was genuine. The anger was relevant, and the anger needed to be expressed, but I felt it needed to expand the inquiry to also include how it is that public institutions become so deeply rooted and seeped in corruption, because all our public institutions are essentially a coming together of all our individual consciousness. And unless there was in individual consciousness corruption that was as deeply rooted, it was not possible for our public institutions to become as corrupt as they were. And this to me felt like an important conversation to have with fellow countrymen, whether they were villagers in far-flung corners of this country, whether they were students in colleges, whether they were individuals in public squares, whoever was willing to engage. That was the intention with which I started. And my crying call was for people to really get in touch with their own honesty in their individual lives, in their individual expression. And as I walked across the country, when you are on long walks, all you're left with is yourself. And your heart, whatever is in your heart, is starkly visible for you to see. You can't hide from your own heart. And this whole inquiry of how honest am I in my relations, in my expression, in what I have in my heart and what I show to the world and what I say to the world. These became important questions for me to tackle. Up until this point, even as I conceived this walk from Kanyakumari to Delhi and led it over 4.5 months, I perceived myself, I saw myself as somebody who will have a significant footprint on the landscape of reformation especially in the socio-political domain. So transforming the politics of this country, transforming the governance of this country, enabling people, everybody of this country to have better access to means of livelihood, education, healthcare, so on and so forth. So this I perceived as the rest of my life waiting for me. And India is a country that has been for quite some time. And as we are opening this conversation on truth and reconciliation, there is a deep wound in the heart of this country. We have almost as if the knife is still stuck in the heart. You know, when I visually try and imagine what it's like for the consciousness of this country, our heart was torn apart as the land was torn apart. And what became the basis of this tearing apart was the faith we practiced. And as soon as this land was torn apart, we got quickly busy with trying to improve our material lives. And it was a huge country. The leaders of that time had really grave challenges to deal with, how to make sure that everybody had food, drinking water, access to important basic facilities like healthcare and education, so on and so forth. So there was just much to do in terms of building this country. And in this process of, in this rush to build the country for everybody, all well-meaning and well-intentioned, what got left behind and unaddressed is this wound that is still rotting and oozing blood and sputum and all kinds of rottenness. It is like a, you know, the best term is Rakshasa. You know, it suddenly wakes up and demands blood of whoever it can get. And then, you know, when it has its fill, it goes back to sleep, but it is alive and it is well and it is thriving. And this platform is important because it allows us to talk of many such wounds. And this is just one of the wounds. But I'm drawing that in reference to my story because all along this walk, a lot of times people would meet me and talk to me about what it meant to them to see a Muslim of this country lead a walk of this kind. I did not see myself as a Muslim doing this. I saw myself as an Indian doing this. So constantly having to confront, you know, assertions of my Muslimness and Muslim identity, which I am, and I have to. But until that point, every time I was told I'm a Muslim, I could see fear in my heart, and the fear was that I am not good enough to do what I'm doing, or I'm not acceptable to do what I'm doing because of this, you know, Muslimness. That's how it landed on me all the time. And I wanted to somehow, I caught myself wanting to hide my Muslimness from everybody, you know, be as least a Muslim as I could be in appearance, while making sure that my heart remained Muslim. And here I was going and talking to the rest of the country about the importance of personal honesty. The irony was not lost on me, that I was having this huge struggle with my own honesty, with all of myself showing up. And I'm going and telling everybody that we need to examine what's in our hearts, and we need to express ourselves, express that honesty if we wish to see more honest institutions, less corrupt institutions. And the closer I got to Delhi, which is the end of my culmination of my journey, the more I could see my heart close, wanting to hide my Muslimness, fearing that it will come in the way of what I can do. So in my conception of this world and our capacities as human beings, I still had huge notions of what one can do. So governing a country is a doing good is a doing. So it's as if you can do things to people and do things to institutions. Um, although the wise people in this gathering who know me well for a long time know that it's all about who we are being that enables the doing. And this left me disillusioned and disappointed in myself. And when I came back, I did not feel the energy. I mean, for example, a lot of people still wonder why this whole movement that I walked away from it as if it didn't matter to me. And it was a very difficult walking away and turning away, because any path forced me to create an appearance of myself, I felt was going to away my, and I could not conceive how I could function, how I could alive, how I could participate while having this dishonesty, this incongruity between my heart and the path that I'm treading. And if I have to then let go of the path, then that's best for me, and that's it from that path. But having been confronted consistently on my Muslimness, I also had to examine what, on one hand, why not just drop the Muslimness? What's the big deal about being Muslim? Just drop it. It's a faith. There is a God. Okay, there is a God. You don't have to get attached to a particular idea or notion of God. You can just say, yes, there is this God, there is universe, there is universal energy, and so on and so forth. You can find ways of distancing yourself from your lineage and stick on to what is a field that you could perhaps positively impact it with it. All notions, really. I mean, I'm just honestly admitting these are all notions. One can even succeed by having in your heart. Why my Muslim sites that I have discovered. But I as source, open wounds, right? That really bother a lot of us. Right? So there is this right now in the times that we are living in, Taliban is back in governance. A wonderful soul, Danish Siddiqui, a journalist, is no more. He's martyred, most likely by Taliban. I've come across a news report, and these days I'm fairly skeptical about news reports. Yeah. but there is a news report that I have come across that is deeply distressing for me, and that is that Taliban has issued an edict that all girls in the age group of 15 to 45 must be reported to Taliban so that they can be married off to mujahids. And it is extremely distressing for me to hear such reports. Partly, I'm not sure if it is true because, but I mean, sort of like tribal Islam, I can, as an insider, I will not put it past them to conceive of something like this, even as it disturbs me deeply. It breaks my heart. You know, that's not the way to build any country or any community. And they're doing this in the name of this faith. Bothers me terribly. Then there are a lot of other thorny issues like jihad and you know, kill the kafir and the infidel kind of verses from Quran, and you know, wail the women and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of in this gathering and in our world. Let us acknowledge that we have vast diversities and really polar opposite perspectives on what is beneficial, what is good for humanity, what is a path that is meaningful for humanity, what values should we adopt which are in the best interest of humanity, which further the experience of goodness of life for maximum people, or in fact, why maximum? For every single human being and for all life forms. You know, there ought to be a great experience of whatever life we have on this planet. Right? And in that direction, all of us are likely to have ideas that we are deeply convinced about, or we are deeply rooted in, or we are deeply holding on to, any of these. And that's what creates a bit of a tension between people in our relationships. I mean, that's what causes the fabric of togetherness, the fraternity, to stretch. And sometimes for vested interests and for transient benefits, people do cause tears in this fabric of togetherness. It's easy when we have polar opposite perspectives. Our togetherness can easily be torn apart. Today's conversation is not so much about defending Islam at all. You know, why don't you speak up against you know, triple talaq or jihad or you know, women in hijab and so on and so forth. These are important and valuable questions, and I would like to sit with you with my understanding and also question your understanding until we are able to get to some place from where what we see together. So when we have a togetherness in seeing, there will, what flows from togetherness of seeing is togetherness of doing. Then let us do triple talaq, let us do hijab, whatever it is, that's okay. But let's first examine. So I had to go through my own examination of Islam and what it means to me, and why I'm willing to hold on to Islam and let go of a path which I invested a significant chunk of my life trying to build my capacities to a point where I could say I'm seriously committed to building India as a nation for everyone, and people would take me seriously. To get to that point of earning that credibility, and then to letting all of that go for you know, being in congruence with Islam in my heart and Islam in my life, in my action, in my expression. You know, this was the struggle that I went through. And some of what opened up for me on examining Islam and why I love being in this life system or life path. Some of that I'm sharing with you because these are some core foundational principles, right? Only when we know what we have can we really get to a point of, okay, what do we do to improve this, or what needs to change in this? To change anything that has worked gloriously in the past, one has to carefully examine what we are throwing away. And that's the inquiry that I had to sort of put myself through. Now let me just give you snippets of what stood out for me from Islam. So quickly, just to sort of open the sharing, there are three aspects of Islam. When we say the heart of Islam comprises, let's say, of three principles. Tawheed is the first principle, which is essentially oneness of Allah. That's Tawheed. That's in the heart of Islam. Risalat, which means the messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was the prophet who brought us this faith system as it exists today. So acknowledging his place. And finally, Akhirat. Return to Allah for a conversation of how we lived our life and what we have earned from what we've done. Something like karma. What did we earn? So these are the core principles, just these three. If I'm saying, yes, I see Allah as one, and I'm not willing to add to the oneness of Allah in any way of my choosing, and if I'm accepting and acknowledging Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the messenger, truthful messenger who brought me this message, and I'm believing from the depth of my heart that I have a ordained meeting with Allah, with divine, then well, that's the heart of Islam. But it does not really help us understand what's the big deal about these three things. What's the big deal? So the way I would like to, I'm holding four threads in my hands, metaphorically speaking, right? What I'd like to convey, it's in the next 45 minutes, ideally, so that we also have some time left for questions, is who is Allah? What have I learned about Allah? Who is Rasulullah? What have I learned about him that moves me powerfully? Who am I? What did Allah make when he made human beings? And what is my purpose in this life? So these are the threads, and I'm likely to weave this into some kind of a meaningful fabric that you can take away with you. One of the first things that I began to examine in Islam was the name of Allah Ar-Rahman. So we start any event, anything, even you wake up from your bed, for example, and you start by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I start in the name of Allah, who is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. This is the consistent opening. For anything, I want to have a glass of water, I want to eat some food, I want to step out of my home, I want to start driving somewhere, whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm starting with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And so I decided to examine what is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Who is Ar-Rahman? Who is Ar-Rahim? When I started digging a little bit into the etymology of Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, I came across something very fascinating. It is said that there was only Allah. There was nothing, no creation. And Allah decided to express himself. Here was Allah and a hidden treasure. There was no one, nothing to appreciate the glory of Allah. And so Allah decided on creation. When Allah decided on creation, Allah chose to take a seat in the name of Ar-Rahman. So he chose this name. Amongst all beautiful names, there are infinite beautiful names that one can attribute to Allah, of which some 100+ names are revealed in the Quran. But Allah says all beautiful names belong to Allah. So whatever name, beautiful name you can think of for Allah, that is Allah. But Allah, amongst all the infinite names that he could have chosen from, he chose Ar-Rahman at the time of creation. It's as if he took a seat in this name. He chose to embody this name before he created. He, it, she, I mean, gender is irrelevant actually. Non-gender, but I'm using he for the sake of communication. He chose this name. He took a seat in this name. So when that intrigued me and it stood out for me. Why this name? What's special about this name, Ar-Rahman? Right? And when I looked into the root of this name, Ar-Rahman, the root of this name is Rahm. So if you were to go to a desert and have a conversation with a Bedouin in the desert, and you ask the Bedouin, if he was with his wife who was pregnant, you ask the Bedouin, what's with your wife? And he would say, my wife is with Rahm. So Rahm essentially is a womb that is carrying life in it. Any woman who's carrying a baby is with Rahm. So a sack with life growing in it is Rahm. And Rahman is infinitely like a womb that has life growing rapidly in it. Infinitely having the likeness of the womb. When you examine what is it like, all of us have the experience of being in our mother's womb. We've not had to strategize, we've not had to work hard, we've not had to figure out how we will be fed. In fact, and this stunned me when I first learned about this, the mechanism of the womb is such that if a pregnant woman is not able to keep food down, and a lot of times because of nausea during pregnancy, women go through phases in which they're simply not able to keep food down. Even if they did not eat for 2 weeks or more, it changes nothing for the nutrition of the fetus in the womb. because the fetus is drawing its nutrition from the bones of the mother. Which is why when they hit about 40, especially if they have children, than 1 or 2 children, the likelihood that they will experience arthritic pains is because their bone has melted to feed the children who grew in their wombs, who took life by being in their womb. So that's the feature of this womb. For the fetus, there is perfect nutrition and there is perfect safety in the womb. So much so that of all the infinite diseases that humanity is afflicted by, the diseases will actually penetrate the womb and also affect the child are almost insignificant. You can count those diseases on your fingers. Most diseases, majority of them, a mother might be infected by it, but the womb keeps the fetus and the baby safe. This is the feature of the womb. So there is perfect nutrition for the baby in the womb, and there is perfect safety for the growing child in the womb. And the growth in the womb is rapid. From a single cell organism to a fully developed human being with all those beautiful eyebrows and eyelashes and tiny fingers and nails and all of this tiny perfection of a human being in 9 months' time. If the rate of growth in the womb was to continue even after we had taken birth, we would have adult human beings in about 9 months. That's not how life works, though. The design of life is slightly different in the womb and outside the womb. It is the same for a lot of mammals, a lot of birds. Inside the egg and outside the egg, the growth continues to have a similar pace. Even if there is a little bit of slackening, it is marginal. But human beings end up consuming about 15 years to become sexually mature and become adults, physically speaking. Emotionally, we may figure other age categories for them. But physically, they mature. They take 15 years to mature. Right? So there is the stark difference between rate of growth in the womb and the rate of growth outside the womb. So Rahim has this feature. The food there is so rich, the food there is so perfect that the rate of growth is very, very fast. Outside that womb, we cannot keep up with that growth. These are the features of the womb. And Allah is saying, in choosing the name Ar-Rahman, Allah is saying, I am having the likeness infinitely like a womb. And everything is in my Rahim. Allah is saying everything is in my Rahim. My Rahim envelops all of life, Allah says. So if Allah is saying, I am in Allah's Rahim still, right? And I have one experience of a Rahim, which is my mother's womb, where I had perfect nutrition. I didn't have to work hard to earn bread, nor did I have any fear of security. No threat whatsoever. Perfect safety. These conditions must apply to an infinite degree to Allah's Rahim. Otherwise, it won't add up. But my experience as a human being is full of misery and pain, and having to work hard for food. And often, for many, no matter how hard you work, you still don't find food. How are you a Rahman if this is my experience of what it means to be human? Now I'm opening the second track now, a parallel track, so to speak, of what does it mean to be human? We are aware that we have 4 dimensions. When these 4 dimensions come together, we have an integrated experience of being human. We have a physical body, of course, and that this physical body makes us human. We also have emotions, and they are integral to expanding our experience of being human. We otherwise we wouldn't be able to perceive love, affection, beauty, art, all of this. We can only perceive this when we have a fairly vivid and alive, thriving emotional experience. So it adds to our humanness. There is an intellectual dimension to being human. We figure out, how do we travel to Mars? How do we travel to Moon? What is quantum physics? Quantum mechanics? How do we solve the problem of COVID-19? How do we make these vaccines? What is this virus? All of this intellectual work that we do, the technology that we are now using to connect with each other across 7 seas, and all at once together in this experience. How do we make this possible? So there is this intellectual dimension that adds to our humanness. And if this is taken away from us, our humanness is reduced. And then there is a spiritual dimension to all of us. We have a spirit. We have a soul. And that's what makes us truly human. So there are these 4 dimensions. What grows when I was in my mother's womb, what took life and grew in my mother's womb was the physical body of Abdul Mujib Khan. And physical body of Abdul Mujib Khan received perfect nutrition and perfect safety in his mother's womb. Having come out of my mother's womb and starting to now examine Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahman's Rahim that envelops all life, which means it also envelops me. And the feature of my mother's womb was rapid growth and development. The phenomena of rapid growth and development must be true for Allah's Rahim as well. Then the question is, what kind of rapid growth and development is Allah providing perfect nutrition and perfect safety for? If Allah's Rahim was only intended to provide to human beings also only physical nutrition for rapid development and growth, and physical safety for its viability, then how does the Rahim then attend to the 3 important dimensions of being human, which is the intellectual dimension, which is the emotional dimension, and the spiritual dimension? And for Allah, which dimension matters the most? This life is transient. all of us, there will be a moment in our lives, we will bid adieu and we are gone into some other dimension. As per our beliefs, whatever those beliefs are, with all due respect, right? Even if you believe you will get atomized and you will just not exist. Okay. Right. But there is a time that is awaiting us. We're marching towards that time where we would be gone. And if there is Allah and Allah cares, right? Allah has, the way I'm defining Allah's Rahim is as a field of infinite love, compassion, and mercy of Allah, in which all life thrives into fruition. Everyone comes into fruition. So for a human being to come into fruition, they have to necessarily have nutrition for their intellect. They have to have nutrition for their emotional body, and they have to have nutrition for their spirit and soul. And what comes into fruition is the soul. That is the purpose of Allah's Rahim for human beings. It is different for rabbits or cats. Human beings as a species, the purpose with which they were created and sent down upon earth. What matters most to Allah is the blossoming of the spirit of human beings, the souls of human beings, because that is the richest dimension of humanity. And when we start seeing it in this way, with this lens, right? And we ask ourselves, all right, how did I know whatever it is that I have known intellectually, right? I've had to go through experiences, and both good and bad experiences have taught me, added to my intellect. So both good and bad experiences are nutrition to a dimension of my humanity, without which my humanness is impaired. When we ask ourselves, all right, how do we become emotionally mature? What does it take for maturation emotionally? Oh, you have to go through some terrible, terrible pain. Not only do you have to go through some terrible, terrible pain, you have to overcome it. You have to rise above that pain. You have to really work with that pain in such a way that the memory of it is available to you. You've not hidden it away, right? But it has opened up vistas of wisdom for you that you can then take to fellow humanity in service. That's a blossoming. That's emotional blossoming. The spiritual pain, spiritual dimension. There was a picture, I think this was 2015, I'm not sure, of this boy, Syrian boy, on the shores of Germany, it was, or Turkey, Germany, that really created a huge hue and cry globally as a small baby lay on the beach, dead. Coast of Turkey, yeah. Thanks, Alif. And right at that time, when I saw this picture, I was holding my third child in my arms, and I broke down inconsolably. I was sobbing, looking at that child, because this baby in my arms, and I was feeling a lot of love and affection for her. And then suddenly this visual of a child similar in age, having to go through really unfortunate circumstances, broke my heart. And this question came up for me. If I was the father of this child, what would I do to protect this child? Unequivocal. I would give my life to protect my child. Whatever it is that I could do, I would do. But I cannot bear to live with trauma of losing a child. If I could do everything to make sure that my child, and this could go to any extreme. And then it occurred to me suddenly that there is a huge quantum difference between our willingness to endure physical trauma versus our willingness to endure emotional trauma. There is a quantum difference in these two levels. And then I asked myself, all right, if emotional trauma is so avoidable for me, I would be happy to give my life, but not if I could avoid something that is deeply emotionally traumatizing. Spiritual trauma. Does such a thing exist? A spiritual trauma? And it dawned on me, the spiritual trauma is separation from the divine. You know, imagine I was in my mother's womb and I was constantly telling my mother from the womb that, you know, you don't matter to me and I am my own person and I know everything. I will decide everything. All while being in the womb. It's almost like I'm kicking away my mother to distance myself from her. This separation from the divine is spiritual trauma. To me, hell and heaven are fairly simple to understand. You know, heaven is being close to one who is most beloved. That is heaven. Hell is knowing I cannot live without my beloved. But unfortunately, through some of the things I have done, I have kicked my beloved away. And so I cannot be with my beloved anymore. That's hell. You don't need more than that. Hearts will be separated from our beloved, and all of us know love. Separated from our beloved, from divine, having rejected consciously for whatever purposes and reasons. Well, and the divine says, all right, have it your way. Be off by yourself. That's hell. Everything, I'm at 4:15. Let me quickly sort of how do I share the presentation? I just need to find a way to share the presentation. I have a quick presentation.
Share screen.
Yeah, show screen, right? Yeah, share screen. All right. This is just an expansion of Allah's Rahim I was talking about. 1 second, let me just. Yeah. So these are different levels, and at each level, so Allah's Rahim for each of us is distinctly unique. And each field, so mother's womb is a field of Allah's Rahim. And then the first family in which we born is another field of Allah's Rahim. So there are fields of Allah's Rahim, just like there is electric field and there is magnetic field, and then there is Allah's Rahim, right, which holds us together. It is held, our lives are held together by time and space and our relations. The fabric of our relations holds us in place in this lifetime. So this is something that I wanted to share. This is getting too technical into details. Yeah. Essentially, in Islam, there are only two duties, right? There are rights of Allah, and I'm obliged to give shahada, which means okay, here is human beings were the first creation of Allah, even before time and space was created. In Islam, this is the conception of creation. Human beings were created in subtle light, and very subtle light, right, and were gathered as souls. We call it ruh, right? Our ruh was gathered, right? And when our ruh was gathered, Allah turned to us and asked us a question, right? He says, "Alastu bi rabbikum," and that literally translates into, "Am I not your Rabb?" It's almost like my mother turning to me and asking me, "Am I not your mother?" It would confuse me if she asked me this question, "Am I not your mother?" I mean, and I would start wondering, have I done anything to displease her, right? And quickly, all of the humanity responded to Allah in unison, in one voice, and we all said, "Qalu wala shahidna." Of course you are, and I will testify. And so when we say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, it is like we are testifying to the covenant we have taken with Allah in that state of being a ruh gathered in front of Allah, in that alam arwah, it is called. It's a place where all souls rest. And then we were put to sleep after we gave that covenant. So when we recite Shahada here, it's like we are reconnecting with that moment when, in the state of being a soul, we promised Allah that we will testify to Allah being our Rabb, right? Rabbul Alameen, right? Which means Allah nourishes us, Allah determines all of our life for us, and Allah will give us death, and Allah will wake us up again from our death and give us back our bodies for the meeting that is to take place between us and Allah. And of course, establish Salat, which is the prayer, 5 daily prayers that Muslims do, give Zakat, give charity, fast for the sake of Allah, and if you have capacity, go and do Hajj for the sake of Allah. So this is huququllah. I mean, if you do this, you've done your bit for the rights of Allah. But the rest of our life, right, is all about huququl ibad. 80% of Islam is about huququl ibad, which is essentially broadly comprising being loving and compassionate with all your relations, being kind and generous with all your relations, treating everybody equally and fairly, establishing justice, extending dignity, and making sure you're not impinging upon anybody's freedom. This is huququl ibad, and this is 80% of Islam. And why is huququl ibad important? If we look at how we are held in life, It is the fabric of relations that holds us together. All our outcomes that we achieve in life, we pursue goals, we have mission, we have tasks, all of this that we achieve in life is through our relationships. And when our relationships work, we have a beautiful experience of our life. And when our relationships don't work, we have a very poor experience of life. Right? And that is how Huququl Ibad is critical. And it is very functional, very practical. You have to attend to all your relationships and fulfill all your obligations. There is no Huququl self, interestingly. Right? What about my rights? What will I get? When will I get? Who will I get it from? Right? This question. Right? Now, for addressing this question, let me take you to this slide. Right? Our life in Islam, all of our life, for everybody, every moment of my life is a one-on-one engagement with Allah, with divine. And how we are in a conversation. The divine and me are in a conversation at all times, even right now. Even as I'm speaking to you, I'm not just speaking to you, right? I'm also speaking to Allah. I'm in some ways telling Allah that the responsibility that you've put on my shoulders of testifying to your oneness and testifying to your rububiyat, I am fulfilling that obligation by speaking in as best a way as I can to the people who've gathered to listen to me. So I'm saying this to Allah as I say whatever I say to you about my discoveries in Islam. Right? So there is Allah, and how Allah speaks to me is by putting me in circumstances. All the circumstances that I have, and all my circumstances are a means of nutrition for me. First and foremost, primarily, they serve the function of nutrition, which means Allah is always concerned about my blossoming, about my fruition, coming into my fullness as a spirit, as a soul. So my circumstances are designed to enable that in the best way possible. In the process, if I was to lose a hand or a leg, God forbid, not that I wish that for myself, that would be a severe test to endure. But nevertheless, I mean, even if I have to endure that, then Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, it's welcome, because it enables me to become all that I am meant to be for humanity. Because when I become all that I am meant to be, and I make it available to humanity, that is the most compassionate act one can do, to bring one's fullness in service of all of humanity. All my intellect, all my wisdom, all my emotional stability and balance and my resilience and so on and so forth. And all my intellectual knowledge that I can share in its fullness, when I offer it to humanity, I have done my job for which I was sent down. That's my job, to share everything that I have been given with humanity, because we were sent down upon earth to be Allah's Khalifa. Now this Khilafat, the way it is understood and explained, it's like, oh, ISIS wants a Khilafat, right? ISIS is trying to establish a Khilafat. That's how we perceive Khilafat. That's got nothing to do with the foundational understanding of the word Khalifa. Each of us is a Khalifa of Allah, right? What do we mean by Khalifa of Allah? Being a Khalifa of Allah, everything that we have was given to us. We didn't determine which nationality we will be born in, which mother's womb. Of course, I mean, we can say in a manner of speaking that, we chose for ourselves a particular country, a particular womb, and so on and so forth, because it allows us to understand life and contribute to life in a meaningful way. So we make meanings of a lot of phenomena. And this is one meaning that I'm presenting, that everything was determined for us to set us up for the most beautiful blossoming possible for us. And so everything was determined for us. Everything was given to us. Now that we have been given everything, our responsibility is twofold. To be a Khalifa is to be a trustee of Allah. Now, all of us understand what it means to be a trustee. Right? for a trustee, the job is twofold. One, whatever is in your trust, keep it safe. It's not your property to do as you please, and you cannot be negligent with it. So if you're given health, take care of your health. If you're given a body, take care of your body, so on and so forth. And you're given wealth, take care of it. You're given knowledge, take care of it. You're given a family, take care of your family. You're given a community, take care of your community. You're given a country, take care of your country. Fantastic. But more importantly, everything that is given in a trust is meant to be spent so that it enables well-being for all of life. Right? So everything that is in the trust, we have an obligation to spend it such that well-being is enabled for everybody. That's when we fulfill the obligation of being a Khalifa. And Allah said to the angels, and he made the declaration in the skies, that I have created a special creation and I'm going to send them to earth so that they can be my Khalifa. They can be a trustee of whatever I have given them. And they spend it in such a way that it enables well-being for everybody. That's our job. When we are doing that, our primary conversation with Allah is healthy. So there will be ease, there will be grace, there will be more help. It feels like universe is aligning to support us in what we are trying to do. And if our actions are in service of all of life, then Allah is pleased with us, and circumstances will be sent upon us that are in alignment with our actions. And if we fall short on our actions, if we start seeing, how can I take from what I have or take from what others have, right? If we become non-Khalifa-like in our actions, then our circumstances start to change, so that our essential being, the nafs that we have, moves up, evolves into nafs mutmainna. Nafs mutmainna is a nafs which is constantly pleased with Allah, pleased with divine, and ever grateful for everything, understands, sees, is deeply wise. This is nafs mutmainna. Nafs is something that comes together. There are two distinct elements. There is jibillat here and there is ruh. And when these two elements come together, almost as if they get entangled, and once the entanglement, ruh is from the skies, what Allah has sent, and jibillat is matter, our physical matter, the earth of which we are made, and we go back to earth, the clay of which we are made, that is jibillat. And when these two combine and come together, what we have is nafs, and every nafs is in a direct conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something that I wanted to share. Okay, let me conclude by sharing an incident from. I have not touched upon the life of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He had, after he was anointed as a prophet by the archangel Jibreel alayhi salam, and he started to receive revelations of Quran, and he started preaching in his world, which was the tribe of Quraysh, his hometown, Makkah. And his teachings were tearing that entire society apart. Families were getting broken, and people of Quraysh really hated him from the bottom of their hearts. 10 years of sincere effort in preaching to Quraysh led to about 100 plus converts to Islam. And not only that, he had because in the tribal society, the way they were organized, his source of protection was his tribe. And the head of his tribe, his uncle, passed away 10 years after he started preaching Islam. And his wife also passed away. And that was a period of grief for Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he needed protection to survive. His life was in grave threat. Everybody was conspiring to kill him. And he was aware of this conspiracy. And he knew that he had to do something to keep himself safe. And so that he could continue with his mission of spreading Islam. And to secure such safety, he thought he would visit the neighboring tribe of Taif. and seek their protection and their permission to allow him to preach freely the new faith that he has been professing for 10 years in Makkah. And so he visits Taif, and he visits the chieftains of Taif. He is himself from an excellent lineage from Makkah. So his tribe is really like peerless tribe. So they have regard for the tribe. But when he conveys his message to them, they of course sneer at him and ask him to basically take his. This is broadly what they said: take your filth elsewhere. We have nothing to do with your filth. And if you are a prophet, we don't want to, earn Allah's wrath. And if you are not a prophet, you are filth to us, and we don't want to engage with you. Just sort of what you were looking for, you will not get it here, essentially. But he stayed back in Taif, even after the chieftains of Taif refused to engage with him, because he thought, having come all the way, let him at least just convey his message to people of Taif. And when his words started to have effect over a period of 10 days, slowly people started to pay attention to what he was saying. And they were beginning to get convinced by some of his arguments. And that's when the chieftains of Taif realized that he is going to do exactly what he has done to Makkan society, which is tear families apart, in Taif as well. And we can't have this nuisance in Taif. So we need to get rid of him. And so they gathered all the ruffians of Taif and instructed them to lynch him. So he was practically lynched in Taif. He had to flee to save his life. He had one companion with him only, Zaid bin Harith. And together they flee. Zaid did his best to protect Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from physical harm, but he was just one person in a mob. There was hardly much he could do. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was deeply wounded, not just physically. Of course, there were bad physical wounds, but he was emotionally deeply traumatized with the way this entire lynching was carried out. And after he ran to a sufficient distance from Taif and he could rest, there was a garden of Makkah. Of course, he didn't know that this garden belonged to the Makkans, but it had a wall and a shade. And he decided to get some rest there. He sat down exhausted, looking at, there was blood flowing from his body. His shoes were all dripping in blood. So much blood had flown that his shoes were dripping with blood. And he sits down, and the first thing he does is makes this prayer to Allah. So he says, "To you, my Lord, I complain of my weakness." So he's starting with saying, "Allah, I complain to you, not of the people who have done this to me. I'm such a good person. I wanted to do goodness for everybody in humanity, and look at what they have done to me. They have treated me poorly, badly. None of that, right? I complain to you of my weakness, Allah. Whatever I have encountered is a result of my weakness. Right? This lack of support and humiliation that I am made to receive is from my incapacity to serve you. You are most compassionate and merciful. You are the Lord of the weak, and right now you are my Lord. I'm weak and you're my Lord." And then he comes in with this slight bit of complaint. He says, "To whom do you leave me, Allah? To a distant person who receives me with hostility, which is people of Taif, or to an enemy you have given power over me, which is his family back home. And all of these people who want him dead are essentially his cousins. Right? As long as you are not displeased with me, I do not care what I face. I would, however, be much happier with your mercy. I seek refuge in the light of your face, by which all darkness is dispelled, and both this life and the life to come are put in their right course. No, life to come are put in their right course against incurring your wrath or being subjected to your anger. To you I submit, I earn until I earn your pleasure. Everything is powerless without your support. He makes this prayer. To be so badly humiliated and physically tortured, to come out of there with not an iota of complaint against the people, or wanting any ill to them, but really asking Allah to keep him safe and give him mercy. To me, this was the epitome of what it meant to be non-violent and compassionate. If in that state you could feel this way and you make this kind of a prayer, to me that is powerfully the way I would like. That's a role model for me that I'd like to follow in those footsteps. And that's what makes Islam for me so beautiful and precious, because it urges us in this way. Because all of my life is between, so often, in the way life plays out, things come to us, goodness comes to us, or okay, this slide. Right, there is us here, right, and then there is source, which is Allah, and there are means. Whatever comes to us, goodness or what we don't like, comes to us through our relations, family, colleagues, governments, all the circumstances, etc., etc., etc. Everything comes to us through some means, right? And what happens with us as human beings is we start getting entangled in the means, or with the means. Oh, you said this to me, you did this to me, blah, 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 right? They did this to us, etc., etc. Actually, nothing moves, not a tiniest of atom moves without will and power of Allah. Not a tiny thing moves. So, and I am in Allah's Rahim, I'm held in Allah's Rahim. So nothing can enter into Allah's Rahim and touch me until Allah has willed it for me as the perfect nutrition for me. So rather than getting entangled in the means, if I immediately turn to Allah and have a conversation, really, what have I done, Allah? How can I be better? How do I improve myself? So that whatever I put out is best for all of life. There is a radically new way in which we start to engage with everybody around us. We are not constantly holding them in blame for whatever it is that we are experiencing, right? Because we are trying to take responsibility for our experiences. So either it is that I'm getting derailed and I need to course correct, or I need to expedite my journey. I need to sort of hasten up, grow up in some sense, so that I am more available to serve humanity. Now, this to me is the powerful and liberating framework of Islam that compels me and moves me deeper and deeper into submission, because it liberates me to love everybody regardless of whether they love me or not. I'm free. I'm free of everything. My only accountability in some sense is first to Allah. Then, of course, I'm accountable to worldly relations. If I'm showing up at 3 o'clock, I ought to show up at 3 o'clock. People are waiting, right? And there are technical difficulties. People are suffering because of that. Valuable time is getting wasted, and I'm responsible for that. So I take that responsibility, but there is a larger responsibility. At all times, I'm always accountable and responsible to Allah, so that I attend to my fruition, my blossoming, and make it available to the rest of humanity. This to me is the essence of Islam. This to me is the heart of Islam. It's serving all of life with the best of yourself. And the only thing that happens in this life is all in service of enabling us to be able to do that job for all of life. I'd like to take a pause here and make time for questions. There are a lot of slides, but that's okay. Maybe we can keep that for another time. Now let us open space for questions. How do I get out of screen share mode? Okay, yeah, here it is. Your screen sharing.
Stop share. You have a button, stop share, in the up side of the screen.
Yeah, pause share. There is pause share.
Pause share, stop share.
Oh, somebody help me out. I'm grateful for that help. Thank you.
Welcome.
Right.
Well, through your heartly discussion, it was very moving, and there's a lot of truth that are coming forth from what I know by doing the work of the knowledge book. And I don't know if you know about the knowledge book.
No, I've just found out from you. I'm curious to.
Yeah, this is the book. It's called the knowledge book.
Right. Mashallah.
It's written from Turkey. It came from Turkey. From a woman called Mevlana.
Okay.
And it goes to say about the mechanics of reality. What is Allah? What is all merciful? What is Rahim, Rahman, and everything it is vibrating. You know, the thoughts that we have about things, and I think we need to reconciliate the religious comes from stories, from ethos and pathos and metaphors, and I like the womb in Hebrew. Rechem is also womb, yeah. So I could connect with that. So, and we need to, I think, to reconcile between the technological surroundings that we are here, that we are in,
Right.
with the faith.
Yeah.
With there's a technology in the names.
Yeah.
There's technology in the realms. There's
Yeah.
technology, and once we can explain things in a technological level, how the mind works, how the mind, reflects with Allah, with totality, how the in and the out connects, what is the lessons in life, all of that can be explained in a very technical, and sure, this is the bridge that we need to make in order to explain, to be connected with the oneness.
Indeed.
And this is my.
Indeed. Thanks all. There is a question from Vijay in the chat. Essentially, the question is this my personal interpretation based on my own experience and inquiry, or is it more universal than that? It is more universal, but I discovered the universality after I had the experience and interpretation. And then I started contacting the learned scholars of this faith and sharing with them how I perceive our faith. And they said, of course, this is there in so many books and so many treatises have been written on this, and you should read this book and that book, and it expands on what you're saying. So there is a lot of study material that is still available that I am right now in the middle of studying. In fact, just sharing, because many of us also share two things in common. One is many of us here are engaged in transformation of hearts, and many of us are also engaged in transformation of organizations. Right? And a lot of my study is allowing me to extract frameworks of both transformation of human hearts and transformation of organizations from some of the source materials that I have shared. And all of this there's plenty of literature. I'm just blown away by what's there and what we have lost touch with. You know, it's almost like over the last 500 years, 500, I would go back, actually I'd go back all the way to 1100. You know, from 1100 onwards, there is a steady erosion of serious inquiry, right? And what has taken over today is dogma. You know, do this and don't do that, and rigid sort of holding on to structures. This kind of dogma comes from fear of losing what is precious, and but what is precious is being lost because we are distancing ourselves from the spirit of it and trying to pay more attention to the matter of it, and that's a challenge. Yeah. That I cry over this. I mean, I really cry copiously over this, that we have lost this essence in favor of dogma. And for me, that's deeply hurt. That's what hurts me deeply and breaks my heart every day. Thanks, Vijay.
Thank you so much, Mujib. My heart is so full. And coming back to the purpose of this platform, Kiran, Kristen, and I got together last year after the George Floyd killing. And I remember I just had this intense energy that just arose saying, when are we going to get over our schisms and our us and them polarization? So when is it ever going to end with humanity? And isn't COVID time that we do that? You know, what a wonderful opportunity. And then, you know, working with Vijay's question on how did we get here when everything is so beautiful in every faith? And I'm sure, like me, many of the people on the call today have had the good fortune to sit in such presentations from insiders of Buddhism and, you know, Sikhism and Hinduism, and also receive from the true lovers of and the true followers of those faiths and traditions. So therefore, the question is, where do we go wrong? I mean, where do we go off? Why are we seeing what happens with the Taliban and, you know, some of the things you mentioned earlier? And the only way I can make meaning from that is anything that's truly beautiful and worth having needs to earn its fullness, its fruition, as you are saying. And it has to go through this powerful test, what Campbell would call the hero's journey, right? So it's kind of, even all the so-called atrocities in the name of Islam, the dogmas, what if that too is part of the raham of Allah?
It is,
right?
It is.
And so that in the coming through of that, in the digestion of those dogmas, then what will appear on the other side, the fruit, the flower, the blossom, will truly be expressing the fullness and the wholeness that will have integrated the very opposite of it as well, right? Because there is no other. So I can only hope and pray that somehow, you know, we're asking these questions of why is the dogma and why did we lose touch with the essence? What if this is still a work in progress?
Indeed.
You know, and maybe we're just catching it in the middle of a experiment, so to speak, of the divine, and, you know, we haven't seen the final result yet. And yeah, I just thought I would offer that. And the reason this platform is called Truth and Reconciliation is because, of course, South Africa showed the world, and all that happens with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, because there's one thing for our individual journeys and our faiths, but then very often faith and religion is also socio-political, right? And then these problems need to be addressed in those domains as well, and the differences come up in those domains of the social, political, not just, it doesn't remain in the realm of the religion. So the reason we set up the Truth and Reconciliation platform is who's doing the work from the inside out. The governments can be doing what they have to do, and all the leaders of these faiths can be talking to each other, but we have the great opportunity with technology and Zoom rooms like this.
Yeah.
We don't need to wait for some government or some other leader to show us out of the woods. We can each begin this one life at a time, a people's movement.
Yeah.
And so I'm just so deeply grateful that we're able to do this. And
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mujib. And you are practically the first. I know Rukmini Iyer started this week off with a dialogue on caste, which is the other incredible wound of India, and how that gets interpreted.
Yes.
And now you're the second one.
Right.
And I'm just, somewhere my heart is just open, and I'm with the questions, I'm with the questions and the pain of what happens in the name of Islam.
Yeah.
But I'm also very grateful to you, and because I have been studying Sufism, and I truly believe I'm a Sufi actually. I'm a mad Sufi actually. Yeah, if we can take what you shared today, I don't know how you want to build this conversation. We have some more time, but how can what we learned today help address the hijack of Islam, the truth of Islam at this time? What do we do as the heroes and the heroines and the peace warriors, so to speak?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's a very important question you're asking, Nilima. How do we build from here? What is calling to me is one thing clearly, that this is an occasion for us to get together and open the space, as if to give an opening sort of presentation. But if we can hold the space and make this available for frequent visits, then the space will receive the healing energy that we can truly then offer the rest of the world. The work of the healing container, if it can be kept alive, right, and whatever it is that I could do to keep this container alive, which means visiting this container and tending to it in the most meaningful ways I can. Right? So coming in and doing that work, I would be really happy to do that. I commit to doing that work. And if we can sit with each other more often on these questions and truly inquire with openness what lies at the heart of our conflicts, and how we can each aspire to higher states of truth, because at the highest state of truth there is oneness. All of us unite there. But being committed to this journey is what stands out to me as the most important commitment we ought to make today at this juncture. And if this platform can then sort of create working spaces, for example, and each of us can take responsibility for tending to those working spaces, I'd be happy to pitch in and contribute in that way. Did I respond to your question, Nilima?
Yes, Mujib, and just for everyone to know, this is not just an annual event. It carries on through the year as well.
Beautiful.
It'll be around the full moon of July every year that we will hold a big global event like this. But it's meant to be a global movement. So everyone, everywhere, is a decentralized, self-organizing movement. So yes, please, continue what you started here. And I'm here with you and whoever else wishes to join.
Thanks, Usha, for perceiving the unity.
So much.
If there are no questions, then we've fairly come to the end of the session.
I would just like to add one thing, since this next month of August, there's a group of us that is called to go on an interfaith peace pilgrimage to Kashmir and Ladakh, with the intention of going to the shrines of all the enlightened masters of all the different faiths and connect with that energy and really seek its blessing. You were describing the different fields, that onion you showed. How could we connect with that field together? And it's a pretty large group of 19 people who have signed up from south, east, and west of India. All the different faiths are pretty much represented. It's come together very spontaneously. But the idea is that if together we can connect with the power of what sits in Kashmir and Ladakh as the enlightened consciousness of all these masters, and if we can find a way to weave that together in the field, would that raise us up to our highest possible level to be able to receive the descent of grace, right? That can hold us up. And this is happening around the 15th of August for the Renaissance of India and the hope of India showing the world what unity can be like through faith. So I just thought I will announce that pilgrimage here with this beautiful group and seek everyone's blessings for this work. And Mujib, I would have so
I know. I'm actually juggling my calendar to see what's there. I'll get back to you on this one. Yeah.
Okay, it's from the 14th to the 23rd of August.
I'll get back to you on this.
There's a question from Vijay.
Yeah. I've seen that question. It's a lovely question, Vijay. Purity, okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Purity is a state of being. And Puritanism is the idea of that state. It's a conception. It's a mental conception, construct. Did I make sense, Vijay? I'm answering this spontaneously.
Yes, Mujib, that does make sense for me. But it seems to me that Puritanism also manifests as a kind of an imposition, either on oneself or on another. Whereas to me, purity seems to be a state that kind of organically and naturally emerges. And so again, to go back to your thing about being and doing, there is something there. And I suspect, at least for me, that much of the stereotyping that I struggle with is because I'm trying to make sense of the Puritanism and wondering, where has the purity gone? Because I can see the purity, but I'm confronted more often than not with Puritanism. And it's very difficult to have a meaningful conversation when you're kind of trapped in that space. So that was the reason for my asking you. Thank you for sharing your views.
Thank you. I agree with you. Sonika, I'm happy to engage in an extended dialogue with whoever is interested, and I'm happy to keep that space alive We don't have to wait for the next mega event for us to have another conversation. I'm raising my hand to be present for conversations, and whoever is willing to gather, we could all collectively engage in inquiries. This is an offer I can make right now, with gratitude for all the organizers. Kiran, thank you for persisting and reaching out to me and sharing your mail with me. Goodbye, everybody. The recording has been made, right?